Continuing Aleister Crowley's The Diary of a Drug Fiend, we are in Chapter 3 of Book 2, The Inferno, The Grinding of the Brakes. But he motioned me silently into my usual armchair, lit a cigarette for me, and put it into my mouth, switched the electric kettle for tea, and sat on the corner of his big square table, swinging his leg. His eyes were absolutely motionless, yet I felt that they were devouring my body and soul inch by inch. I wriggled on my chair, as I used to do at school when I didn't feel sure whether I had been found out in something or not. I tried to cover my confusion by starting a light conversation, but I soon gave it up. He was taking no notice of my remarks. To him, they were simply one of my symptoms. I realized, with frightful certitude, that my plans were impossible. I couldn't fool this man. I couldn't play on his passions. I couldn't steal in his presence. Despite myself, my lie had become the truth. I could only do what I said I was coming to do, to ask him to help me out. No, not even that. I had not got rid of Peter after all. With King Lammas, I found I couldn't think of myself. I had to think of Peter. I was absolutely sincere when I said, with a break in my voice, "Cocky's in an awful mess." I had it in my mind to add, "Can't you do something to help me?" Then I changed it to, "Won't you?" And then I couldn't say it at all. I knew it was wasting words. I knew that he could, and he would. He came over and sat on the arm of my chair, and took down my hair, and began playing with the plaits. The action was absolutely natural and innocent as a kitten playing with my skein of wool. It stabbed my vanity to the heart for a second to realize that he could do a thing like that without mixing it up with sexual ideas. Yet it was that very superiority to human instincts that made me trust him. "Sir Peter's not here," he said lightly and kindly. I knew that it had pleased him that I had not mentioned my own troubles. "But it's you, my dear girl, that I see in my wizard spyglass on a lee shore, with your mast all gone by the board, and the Union Jack upside down flying from a stump, and your wireless hero tapping out SOS. He dropped my hair and lighted his pipe, and then he began to play with it again. "And some on boards, and some on broken pieces of the ship. They all came safe to land. One's familiarity with the New Testament makes a quotation somehow significant, however little one may believe in the truth of that book. I felt that his voice was the voice of a prophet. I felt myself already saved. You take some of this," he went on, bringing a white tablet from a little cedar cabinet and a big glass of cold water. "Throw your head back and get it well down, and drink all this right off. Here is another to take home to your husband. And don't forget the water. It will calm you down. Your nerves have all gone west. I've got some people coming here in a few minutes, but this will help you through the night, and I'm coming round in the morning to see you. What's the address?" I told him, my face blazed with the disgrace. "A house where the top social note was a fifth-rate musician in a jazz band, and the bottom where we don't give it a name." He jotted it down as if it had been the Ritz, but I could feel, in my oversensitive state, the disgust in his mind. It was as if he had soiled his pencil. The tablet made me feel better, but I think that the atmosphere of the man did more than its share of the work. I felt nearly normal when I got up to go. I didn't want his friends to see me. I knew too well what I was looking like. He stopped me at the door. "You haven't any of that stuff, I take it," he said. And I felt an inexpressible sense of relief. His tone implied that he had taken charge of us. "No," I said. "We used up the last grain some time ago." "I won't ask you to remember when," he replied. "I know too well how muddled one gets, and besides, when one starts this experiment, the clock doesn't tell one much, as you know." My self-respect came back to me with a rush. He insisted on our regarding ourselves as pioneers of science and humanity. We were making an experiment. We were risking life and reason for the sake of mankind. Of course it wasn't true. And yet, who can tell the real root of one's motives? If he chose to insist that we were doing what the letters of thought have always done, how could I contradict him? A buoyant billow of bliss bounded in my brain. It might not be true, but, by God, we'd make it come true. I suppose a light leapt in my eyes and enabled him to read my thoughts. Respice finem. Judge the end. The man, and not the child, my friend. Was that speak finem? He quoted gaily, and then, to my absolute blank amazement, he took me back into the studio, got a bottle of heroin from the cedar cabinet, and shook out a small quantity onto a scrap of paper. He twisted it up and put it in my hand. "Don't be surprised," he laughed. "Your face tells me that it's all right. You hadn't got that look of a dying duck in a thunderstorm, which shows that you're wholly enslaved. As Sir Peter very cleverly pointed out the other day, you can't stop unless you've got something to stop with. You're keeping your magical diary, of course." "Oh, yes," I cried gladly. I knew how important he thought the record was. He shook his head comically. "Oh, no, Miss Unlimited Lou. Not what I call a magical diary. You ought to be ashamed of yourself for not knowing the hours, minutes, and seconds since the last dose. Nous allons Kanger tout kella." Or is that New Alon Changer Tutsela? I don't. Anyways, you can take this if you like, and when you like. I merely put it up to you, as a sort of sporting proposition, that you should see how long you can manage to keep off it. But I trust you to make a note of the exact time when you decide on a sniff, and I trust you to tell me the truth. Get it out of your mind once for all. That I disapprove of your taking it. It's entirely your business, not mine. But it's everyone's business to be true to himself, and you must regard me as a mere convenience, an old hand at the game whose experience may be of use to you in training for the fight. I hurried home, a different woman. I didn't want to save myself. I felt myself as a suit of armor made for the purpose of protecting Peter. My integrity was important, not for my own sake, but for his. Peter's out, so I have written this up. How surprised he will be. I wonder why he is so long and where he has gone. It is very uncomfortable. Waiting with nothing to do. I should like a dose. The tablet has not made me sleepy. It seems to have calmed me. It has taken the edge off that hated restlessness. I can bear it as far as that goes. If only I had something to do to take my mind off things. My mind keeps prowling around the little packet of paper in my bag. I turn 1,000 corners, but it is always waiting behind all of them. There is something terrifying about that fatality of the stuff. It seems to want to convince you that it's useless to try to escape. One's thoughts always recur to lots of other subjects which don't think of as obsessing. Why should we have this idea in connection with dope and be unable to do anything to throw it off? What's the difference? And I'm kind of reminded about what one of the things going on nowadays is that particularly women get diagnosed as bipolar or borderline personality disorder, and the vast majority of them don't seem to be, too abnormal for this, right? But even if you look beyond gender differences, you still find that emotional stability, you could call it, or mood swings and some others, the emotional response to situations varies per person. And just being different is not a fair model of mental illness. It's really not. But one thing when people a lot of the problem that people have with the drugs, for example, is they're not doing it consciously. It's like people talk about raising and lowering their of vibrations and stuff like this, and they don't know objectively what that means, and they don't even know how to just, they'll drink and they'll smoke and whatever, but they don't. They're just going through it. They're not unless they're like, how much can I afford, right? They really aren't doing it in a pay attention sort of way. It's just get wasted, that's it, right? Of course, one can accomplish these things without... Oh, it's backwards. That's why.